It's the Security Weekly News, episode 378. Welcome to the week of 14 April 2024. It's tax week in the United States, so everybody's having a good Monday, I'm sure. Today, of course, is not Monday, but we've got Duo, Steganography, Roku, Palo Alto, Putty, Cerebral, IPOs, SanDisk, Josh Marpet, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News.
Make sure you subscribe to the Below the Surface podcast by Eclipsium in partnership with CRA. We've had the pleasure of speaking with some amazing guests, including Zeno Kova, Richard Hughes, Vincent Zimmer, and more. We discuss topics related to firmware and supply chain security, uncovering those pesky vulnerabilities that lie, well, below the surface in your environments. You can find all the episodes and subscribe by visiting eclipsium.com/podcast or searching for Below the Surface in your favorite podcast catcher.
All right, from exile on the island of Elba, it's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White, and welcome to the show. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe on your favorite platform because, you know, we want you to. So do it now. Like I just told you, do it. Yeah, don't be shy. All right. Cisco's Duo, if you've seen it, is an app that is supposedly better than using SMS for multi-factor authentication. But the Duo security team stated that an attacker stole some VoIP and SMS logs during an attack on their telephony provider. I love the word telephony. It's one of my favorite words. Of course, I always like saying Persephone too, you know what I mean? Persephone is a cool name, queen of the underworld. How can you lose with that? I mean, my daughter's really lucky she's not named like Persephone Telephony or something like that, because that would be really cool. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, Cisco Duo. Duo claims to support over 100,000 customers and handle 1 billion authentications monthly and has over 10 million downloads on Google Play, because you probably have it too, because everybody started requiring it and a lot of people were given no choice. They were told you need Cisco Duo. That's the only option you got. Well, Cisco sent an email to customers that said an unnamed provider who handles the company's SMS and VoIP MFA was compromised on the 1st of April. They said the threat actor obtained an employee's credentials through phishing, imagine that, and then used those to access the system. Imagine that. Give me your credentials. Now I accessed it. Okay. Well, logs from the SMS and VoIP associated with specific Duo accounts between 1st of March and 31st of March were downloaded. Now, according to the report, the provider confirmed that the attackers did not access any contents of messages or use the access to send messages. But the logs did contain data that could be used in spear phishing attacks. The data stolen contained the phone number, the carrier, the location data, the date, the time, and the message type. So I guess they could pretend to contact you from Duo, maybe. It sounds like it may be the start of MFA fatigue attacks, if you recall those fun things where you get like 8,000 pop-ups saying, please confirm, and they just hope you hit one. Yeah. But they apparently were also used in a lot of spear phishing attacks at Uber in 2022. So you might want to advise your people about what your policy is to do in MFA fatigue attacks. Remind them to be incredibly paranoid at all times, but you might want to word it a little softer or not. I mean, like, you know, run and hide kind of stuff. But, you know, it's always a good idea to remind them how to use the apps and what to expect from the apps. But regardless, spear phishing. Steganography, really? I always hated the steganography section of forensics because people got so excited about it. It was like the first thing they always ask when we're teaching forensics boot camps. They're like, are we going to cover steganography? I'm like, oh, yes, we're going to cover steganography. But at the time, anyway, I was always sort of looking at it going, could this really, you know, be a thing? And if it is a thing, does anybody have time to actually conduct these elaborate stat tests? All these people are law enforcement. I was like, you know, you got to conduct all these elaborate tests to try to find steganography. You know, good luck. Well, apparently somebody is doing this now. So TA558 is apparently concealing malware code inside images with steganography, and they deliver this then to targeted systems. It's really hard to detect, let me tell you. Now, if you've forgotten what it is, steganography is a tactic which takes the unused bits in image files, of which there are a lot, and they store strings or whatever they want to store. You can store images inside of images. You can store code inside of images, text files, whatever you want to store there. And they use that unused space. So the image still typically looks okay if you do it right. It's still that picture of the American flag, but you can hide stuff inside of it. I mean, that means, I could put whatever I wanted in there. Well, detection's hard. You're looking for bit patterns, which are really hard to spot because they may change a lot. And if they've been obfuscated, good luck. But TA558 is an attacker that's been around since 2018, and they're known for targeting hospitality and tourism organizations worldwide, but focuses on Latin America. So somebody didn't get that upgrade to Brazil they were looking for. But the campaign is called Stegano Amor, which I think means I love steganography. I'm not sure. I'm sure some of you can correct me, but it was found by Positive Technologies. And so far, over 320 attacks in this campaign have been seen. The attack begins with an email that has a bland document attached that is like something really innocuous, but it's a Word file, Excel file, and it basically exploits a vulnerability in, wait for it, Microsoft Office Equation Editor. Now, this vulnerability was patched in 2017. It was. So that tells you what's going on. But the emails are sent from compromised SMTP servers, so they look legit. If there's an old version of Office installed, once you click on this thing, the exploit downloads a Visual Basic script. It's like, wow, is this like 2006? A Visual Basic script from a legitimate service. The script then runs and retrieves a JPEG image, which contains a base64 encoded payload embedded in that file with steganography. The PowerShell script, which is embedded there, can then download whatever it wants to download from the command and control. So they've been downloading stuff like Agent Tesla, Formbook, Rimcoast, LokiBot, GULoader, Snake Keylogger, Xworm, or anything and everything. I mean, they can download whatever they want, right? But it's not that hard to defend against this if you really want to, because the flaw is more than 7 years old. And I would say that no one is running anything that old. And then, I'm walking through the airport and see a crashed billboard, which appears to be Windows NT 4.0. Well, I haven't seen that, but it could be. But you might want to review what all you've got on your site, and ensure that Dr. Fang's lab is not still using Office 2016 or Windows NT 4.0 or something even worse. Because, Dr. Fang is scary and no one wants to go in there and confront him about that whole thing, because you know how you made Mark cry last month, and Mark used to be a Navy SEAL, and, now everybody's afraid of Dr. Fang, and there was that whole Windows 3.1 thing, and well, Mark used to assassinate people. So I'm turning it all over to HR. Thanks. So upgrade. Come on. Roku is a streaming service that was one of the earliest providers of little boxes you could carry with you to attach to the hotel TV, so you could watch something other than pay-per-views of how to play craps. I mean, I remember doing that, right? Have you ever done? It's a great tactic. They got this super fancy TV in your room, but it doesn't have anything on it that you don't have to pay for. So why not take your little Roku box and make it into a Wi-Fi streaming device? Woo, a smart TV. Well, apparently after all these years, they have now activated two-factor authentication for all 80 million Roku users, because there was an attack on Roku, and it compromised the accounts of 576,000 of their users using, was it something sophisticated? Was it an island of evil? No, it was credential stuffing. I mean, come on. I mean, we've only been warning you about this since forever. I think the very first episode of Paul's Security Weekly was entitled "Use Multi-Factor Authentication or Larry Will Not Shoot Paul with This Potato Cannon." I mean, this was second breach this year for Roku. And so last month, Roku forced all their customers, if they wanted to continue using the Roku device, to agree to arbitration. I love it when you get a contract going, you can do this or not. You want to come in the bar, you have to sign right here. I know it's dark and you can't read it, just sign. And yes, we get to use you for weird experiments later. But they forced everybody to agree to arbitration, which in the United States means that you can't sue. You can only go to arbitration, which doesn't mean you can't get something, but it's a lot harder. And it forced everyone, to do that. I mean, you could have tossed your Roku out the window, but if you wanted to keep using it, well, you had to agree. So some people speculated, so this is a little conspiratorial. Some people speculated this may have been a precursor to releasing the bad news. So they knew they were going to have to tell you, and that they really should have probably put multi-factor up like back, a long time ago, but they didn't want to get sued. So they put this arbitration thing. You clicked it. Sorry. But look, regardless, you need to be using MFA. I don't care who you are. Is it perfect? No. But as many have learned, password spraying is really, really easy in credential stuffing. And somebody in your organization has their password set as Gandalf. They do. Somebody. In my password file, Fladnag, which is Gandalf backwards, is the literal first line of my password file. Gandalf is second. Big Daddy 69 is third. But all those were passwords that we've encountered over and over and over again. I mean, at least make them be creative, right? I mean, come on. Last week, we reported on a Palo Alto 0 day with a CVSS score of 10 in the Firewalls OS, PAN. And, well, it's now actually being seen in the wild, and the attacker is deploying a Python-based backdoor Trojan to steal data and perform other nasty bits on your firewall. Not a good place to be losing things, right? I mean, PanOS described the attacks as limited in volume and said the attack activity was from a single threat cluster that they have nicknamed Operation Midnight Eclipse. Okay, they got a name, though. But it's not a bad name, really. I mean, it's not Tossed Octopus or something cool, but it's okay. I mean, Operation Midnight Eclipse. But it did not rule out that other attackers are going to take up this battle cry, and they probably will, right? And I mean, the only reason I'm revisiting this was to let you know that if you are using these, they released hot fixes for this. Because last week we were saying there are no patches. It's just like, oh, I don't know, just like block your firewall with another firewall kind of thing, but don't use theirs. You might want to use a different firewall. But as of Sunday on the 14th, they did release hot fixes for this, so you can patch this up and get it under control. You should do that right now. I never liked Putty. People always talk about Putty, and I don't like any sort of Putty. I don't like the kind of Putty that you play with. It's gross. I don't like the kind of Putty you put on the walls or on sinks or any of that stuff. It's all just disgusting. But I'm talking about the Putty the free application Putty for SSH. You couldn't save your configuration. It didn't remember who you connected to. It was just very, it's fine in a lab or something for like students, but it was not so great if you did a lot of SSH stuff. I mean, I usually had at least 2 or 3 open SSH windows all the time, and it wasn't cutting it. But it is cheap, read free, but I didn't like it. And I've always used Bitvice for SSH, and even though I have to pay for it, I like that one better. But we use Putty in some of the classes I used to teach. We used it in boot camps and so forth, but I still didn't like it. Well, Putty users got alerted to a critical vulnerability, which impacts versions 0.689 to 0.8. And I don't usually try to get into all these backdated versions, but I wanted, because so many of you have labs, you have freeware and all these things, and that stuff never gets updated in images. I don't even know how many schools I've seen and hospitals where they had a freeware product in an image that was sitting there, and that image was, deep frozen or whatever kind of tool you use, and it was tough to update. The users couldn't update it. So be advised, this can be exploited for a full recovery of NIST P521 private keys, which would be, as they say, bad. The finding was credited to researchers at the Ruhr University Bochum, and according to their report, quote, an attacker in possession of a few dozen signed messages and the public key has enough information to recover the private key and then forge signatures on them. Yeah. Now, what that would do, of course, is it would allow for essentially a message from the client to the server to look legit, because the server stores the keys from sessions. And so what happens is that SSH server would see this as legit. They've got a fake key on a different device, and poof, they're going to be able to log in anywhere where that key has been stored. Other products use this as well. So FileZilla, WinSCP, TortoiseGit, and Tortoise SVN are all vulnerable to this because they contain vulnerable versions of Putty. The issue was addressed in Putty version 0.81. So all these years, and Putty still hasn't got to a primary release number, like 0.81, like 40 years later. But that's how they do it. So if you have Putty anywhere, or your employees are using it from home, a lot of places said, just use Putty, download Putty. I've heard that so many times. Just download Putty, and that's fine. If you like it, that's fine. But you may want to get advise and tell people to update, because I don't know if Putty has an auto update notice or not. So it may be sitting there on your desktop and it's the same one you downloaded 13 years ago when you were in college or something. So check it out. Well, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, or it's called the FTC in the United States, has ordered the mental telehealth company Cerebral to stop using and disclosing personal data for advertising purposes. And then they fined them $7 million. Because the charges were that Cerebral had revealed users' sensitive personal health information and other data to third parties for advertising purposes, and failed to honor their, quote, easy cancellation policies. Come on down to not Crazy Eddie's discount mental health care service, where prices are anything but insane. Yeah. Well, the FTC statement said that Cerebral and their former CEO, Kyle Robertson, repeatedly broke their privacy promises to consumers and misled them about cancellation policies. The company claimed their services were safe, secure, and discreet. Everybody claims that. That's what I tell people. People call me, they're like, what's your services like? I'm like, safe, secure, discreet. But they didn't tell anybody that all their info would be sold to third parties, who then sold it to third parties, who sold it to third parties. And, Augustus de Morgan again. I mean, we talk about Augustus de Morgan all the time. The policies were buried in dense privacy policies that were too long, didn't read kind of things. That box you click OK on because it's like scroll through the 9,748 pages to get to the line that goes, and you can be used for medical experiments, or a human centipede. Was that the South Park? Yeah. Now, you're wanting to find a counselor because you have an issue, and you really don't want to read a 500-page document written in Old English, so you just click OK. The company is said to have provided the sensitive information of nearly 3.2 million consumers to third parties like LinkedIn, Snapchat, TikTok. No telling who they provided it to, but they basically integrated tracking tools in their websites and all of their apps, and these were designed to provide advertising and data analytics functions. The data included names, medical and prescription histories, home and email addresses, phone numbers, birth dates, demographic info, IP addresses, pharmacy and health insurance information, and more. Basically, they sent them everything. Probably include your DNA. Who knows what all they asked for. But the company was also accused of failing to enforce security because they allowed former and current employees to access users' medical records from May to December in 2021. So people out at home that had been fired or quit could still access people's medical records. Like, let's see what he's got, dude. And they allowed insecure access methods that exposed patient information. They also sent out, it just keeps getting better. They also sent out promotional postcards to consumers, which were not in envelopes. They were just postcards. And they sent these to over 6,000 patients, which included their names and language that appeared to reveal their diagnosis and treatment to anyone who saw the postcard. That's probably why my postman's been looking at me funny lately. But the company has been ordered to notify users about the disclosure of their health information to third parties and ensure that all shared data has been deleted. Right. I'm sure they'll be able to accomplish that if they sold to TikTok. But hey, whatever. In the past year, the FTC has taken similar actions against other health cares like BetterHelp, GoodRx. I don't know if you say Good Prescription or GoodRx, but in the U.S., RX means prescription, and Premom for doing the same thing. Imagine that. They sent a warning to Amazon as well, since Amazon now owns One Medical and can perform medical procedures at your home with a driver. No, you just go in there and say, I'd like a gallbladder surgery, and a guy shows up in a van and comes in and goes, hello, I'm Dr. Nick. And do it on your kitchen table. It's amazing. It's so cheap. It's like open heart surgery for $19.99. Yeah, it won't be delivered for 3 days, but it's coming. I mean, it does sound scary, but it's probably better than using that Mr. Doctor app, which allows random people to come over. I mean, it's like laser ship medicine. But anyway, who knows? All right. I'm gonna qualify this next story with this is not political, and I don't want it to be political. I just want to give you some advice. But Truth Social is a media platform that was put up by Donald Trump's company, and it IPO'd recently. I'm not going to get into this politics business. I don't want to. I would love to, but I don't want to. But I wanted to explain how IPOs work because I read this whole story about people investing their life savings, taking all the money out of their retirement accounts and stuff, and investing in Truth Social. Not endorsing or condemning it. Any company that wants to go public goes public to raise money. I mean, that's why they do it. They sell shares, you buy shares, those shares give them money to work with. So hopefully they develop their company. We won't get into the finance stuff, but it basically means they issue shares of common stock. And in an IPO, typically, somber investors review all the materials, read the financials, evaluate the company, its leadership, its history, and then they make a rational decision. Something like, I say, oh man, I believe Mr. Hartwell's tea company should be valued at £5.76 a share. But as we've often seen in the past, people aren't always rational, and they're not always conservative with their money, as Lord Pennygargler up there, and they see a funny video of a goat licking. I can't say that. No, I'm not going to say it. No, but you get the idea. And then they go crazy bidding up the price because there's all this press about, oh my God, this is going to go through the roof. The IPO will be worth $1 billion, $1 billion. I mean, if you bought Cisco at IPO, you wouldn't be listening to me today. You'd be sitting on your island making humans play chess for you and stuff like that. But they bid it up. And a lot of times they don't really know that it's two guys with no customers, no product, and basically no idea, but they have a foosball table in their parents' basement and a cool company name like Blue Martini. So everybody jumps on the bandwagon like it's 1928 and invest. I mean, literally. I mean, some of us took advantage of that back in the day and bought these IPOs and sold them as quickly as possible. Now, caveat emptor means let the buyer beware. And it is the cornerstone of most of our things in the capitalistic system, but it also means, the loose translation of it is you're screwed. So Truth Social jumped to $60 a share when it IPO'd last week, but it was trading at $27.12 this morning. Now, this is the market, right? So the market will punish you for doing dumb things. And again, no politics. This is just factual numbers. I don't know why it's 27 a share, why it was 60 a share, but basically a lot of people started investing, and a lot of them were investing for politics per this story rather than basing their decision on financials and such. And that's fine. You can invest in anything you want. Those stupid long shot bets on the craps table, you can bet those too. I don't care. I will secretly sneer at you as I use the Lou Glorfeld craps method to grind for hours and retire to my comped room with that $1.50 that I made in profit. But hey, you be you. But look, if you're cashing in your retirement and you're betting on wild speculative stocks, penny stocks, weed stocks, you're giving all your money to some guy down in the corner, I mean, just pick your favorite squeegee bum and hand them all your money, because that's what's going to happen. IPOs are dangerous gambles. Even if it's a top-notch company, valuations can be skewed early on. There's no charts, there's no nothing, there's no history. But hey, if you want to risk it, you can. They'll be happy to take your money. So just like I tell people who are trying to gamble, don't bet more than you can afford to lose. Anyway, oh wonder how many goodly creatures there are here. How beauteous mankind is, oh brave new world that has such people in it. People like Josh Marpet. Hi, Josh.
Hey, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm quoting Shakespeare today, so
I am impressed. I'm impressed. And you're talking about, gambling and all that kind of stuff. And I actually have a story about gambling, so it's kind of cool. So the story is about AI supply chain risk. And it's fascinating because depending on which AI model you pick, it's a gamble. So it's interesting because let's put it this way. Every single company out there is putting AI in their product. And I mean, there's probably one or two that aren't, but I mean, like literally one or two that aren't. Everybody else is sticking AI on their product, and they're going to Hugging Face and they're downloading models left and right and data sets. And they're like, put it in. Don't make the joke. And so the problem is that many companies consider AI to be FM. FM, of course, being fucking magic. So we just put an AI in there and then it knows exactly what to do. No, that's not the way it works. You still have to tell it where the data is. You have to give it an understanding of the data. You have to have it understand what questions are going to be asked and what kinds of answers you're looking for and how to format them and all that kind of stuff. And that's great, and that's fine, and that's wonderful. But what happens if the model that you download from Hugging Face or some other place was written badly? I mean, and we're not talking like stupidity, we're talking maliciousness. What if there was a malicious actor that said, if I put something in this model for financial modeling, for stock picking, for whatever, I can get people to do things that I want them to do. And they're literally downloading them and installing them in their own products for me. So the question is, do we have an AI supply chain security problem? The answer is yes, by the way. And if we do, which we do, what can you do about it? And there's a multi-factor problem here. Let me explain, because you've got the models, which are various models there's hundreds of thousands of them out there at this point. And then there's data sets, which there's, again, hundreds of thousands of them out there at this point. Pre-weighted. Here, please use this data set about financial sentiment analysis, which I've pre-weighted for you to make you buy blue chips. Okay. And so we've got to be careful of these things. And there's an article, the one that's in the show notes, about reducing the risk of external AI models. Now, if you build your own, hopefully you're competent enough to build one that's unbiased, does what you want it to do, comes out with solid answers, etc. When it doesn't, by the way, use peer review on your answers, but that's a whole different topic. But in this case, you can have malicious models. You can have security vulnerabilities, because, I mean, when you have hundreds of thousands of people writing hundreds of thousands of chunks of code as fast as they can churn them out, they're all going to be 100% secure, right? Maybe not. And so there's also intellectual property. Are you using a trained model that used training data that the person who built it or group that built it was licensed to use? Or are they using data that they're not licensed to use? It's like if you buy a presentation that has Getty Images stuff in there that they weren't licensed properly, do you have a problem? Absolutely. But I didn't buy the images or not buy the images. I didn't use the images illegally. Doesn't matter. You have stolen goods in your possession. So if you use an AI model or a set of training data that has unlicensed information, unlicensed code, unlicensed, you get the idea, you're still in trouble, or could be. Okay. There's also things like reputation. We're literally back to the days of, hey, have you heard of this one? Yeah. Is it any good? I use it. It works for me. Jimmy uses it. It works for him. You should use it too. Okay, cool. I'll use that one. Thanks. Like it's bad. It's early days of the internet where we don't have, hey, this piece of code got 5 stars anymore. Okay. You've also got storage. You've got the training data. Like there's so many problems with the building and implementation of AI models and data sets that when you use them, please be careful. All right. It's like I tell people now, if you have an image generator and you're using it to generate images, do not use them in production. Well, why not? Because you have no idea, unless you built it yourself, where the training data came from. You don't know if they used copyrighted data. You don't know if they used licensed data, unlicensed data, whatever, to train the model. And with an image, if I do an abstract portrait of Doug, because that's the only way that the camera likes him, then sorry, I couldn't resist. Then what we've got is something that maybe there was an abstract artist whose work was fed into the system and it was never licensed. So he can come after me. And if I put that out there on an SC Media or Security Weekly page, well, that's a derivative work and you owe us licensing fees. And they can make up some really punitive licensing fees at that point. If I've sent it out on 3 million postcards, well, I've got 3 million iterations to pay for. That's awkward. Slight unexpected budget problems. So plus there's the implementation. How easy would it be to breach if you used an insecure model with insecure storage, insecure serialization of the data, insecure methodologies? Well, it could be a very simple way to breach and take all of your customer data. So that's why when your sales and marketing people are like, hey, let's put AI in so we can analyze our data. That's fine. Maybe. So you have to be careful. So what are you going to do? Be visible. If you don't have a business use case, do not put an AI in. Seriously, just don't. So you can scan models for vulnerabilities. The popular vuln scanners are actually starting to get vulnerabilities for AI models, AI training data, etc. Make sure that you have a license. If it's open source license, that's fine. make sure you know what the license is. Make sure you know the license on the data that it trained on. Make sure you know all of the different pieces of it. This is a supply chain risk. Make sure you know every piece of the value chain and of the supply chain. And use safe models and safe languages and safe formats. For example, the one that they have in the article is safe tensors, which is a serialization and storage format, rather than pickle, which is apparently not. So when you build these things, you have to build them using solid licensed pieces, build them using solid engineering and safe pieces, and then amazingly enough, use them in safe and proper ways. I know, crazy, but that's the way to do AI at least a little better than the standard run. Thank you. Back to you.
Okay. Well, it's like, thank you. And that's the way it was. I agree, Josh. But, you got to have AI now. People come to wash your windows. If they don't have AI embedded squeegees, they're not getting the job. So it's got to be in everything. If it doesn't have AI,
dude, that's happening, right?
Oh, I'm sure it is. It's just like you go buy cleaning products at the store, like AI enhanced. They don't even know what AI means, but crazy.
There's going to be this little squeegee. It's going, you missed a spot.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be improvement over squeegee bombs, like spitting on your windshield and going, give me $5. Yeah. All right, thanks, Josh. And finally, I was cleaning up all this old junk from my old office, and I found a whole box of 35 millimeter film cartridges, if you can imagine. And I was thinking about how we used to take the pictures. You waited till the roll was used up, and then you dropped it off. You waited a week, then you picked up the pictures, and you found out you had the lens cap on the whole time, and the pictures were no good or whatever. Well, Western Digital, and I was thinking about this, it came in on my forensics feed. Western Digital said that they plan to release a 4 terabyte SD card next year. Can you imagine that? I remember paying I think it was $2,900 for a 10 meg hard drive that was the size of a cigar box. But this new SD card uses a secure digital ultra capacity standard under the SanDisk brand. And well, I guess you can take a hell of a lot of pictures with a 4 terabyte card. Probably all the pictures you would ever need for the rest of your life. You could just film everything. But it's somewhat less with video, but it's really, really impressive and terrifying for forensics people. Wait till you get that case and you go to the guy's house and you grab the cigar box with like 35 of these things in it. It's going to be like, well, I know what we're doing for the next 2 months. But the current standard cards are about a terabyte anyway on a card that's smaller than a postage stamp. It's so small, it's hard to manipulate, right? I have to put on my magnifiers to even get the thing where it needs to be. But it's a huge leap, 4 times that. And, I remember when I used to leave work. So for all you security people, when I used to leave work, they always search your bag, right? And they were looking to make sure I didn't have any tape reels or folders or books I wasn't supposed to take off site. But, with a card that small, I could put it under my eyelids or somewhere. There's plenty of places something that small would fit. Literally, I'll leave it to you to imagine. But, it is interesting to watch the movement toward just an unbelievable amount of storage at hand, right? Just in your phone or whatever. And I wish I had that old 10 meg drive, but I don't know what happened to it. But or even better, one of those old IBM drives that we had a 10 meg IBM drive on the mainframe. It was the size of an industrial washing machine, and it made that sound when it started. I think it had a pull start on it, and it might have been gas fired or coal fired or something. Maybe that was an industrial dryer. I knew I shouldn't have put all my data in there. Well, anyway, all those things are gone, and then the future comes streaming for us, now with AI. Well, from the Island of Elba, that is the news. Thank you, Josh, and I will see you next time on the Security Weekly News.